Hello everyone. I'd like to just share a couple of words with you about this book, The Inverted Path, available now. Supernatural disorientation and interruptions in travel. Every author has to sort of remind themselves of the subtitle of their book. That's what this one's about. Wonderful cover art by Sam Sheeran. The not for resale on the proof will be gone by the time you pick up your copy. But it has been, appropriately enough, a very insightful journey getting from the origins of this project to here. I want to open up with an anecdote that I picked from Ray Fowler's UFO Testament, Anatomy of an Abductee. And I'll read directly from it. I share this in the book, summarized, that's the word. But I want to read directly from Fowler's text here to give you an idea of the scope of this particular encounter. Sometime between 1 o'clock and 1:30 in the morning of Thursday, December 14th, 1978, John finally succumbed to an overwhelming compulsion. Looking back, he cannot understand his action. He was then separated from his wife and told me he would never leave his daughter alone in the house late at night. I just felt that I had to get out for some reason. I didn't know why, he said. I got dressed, got in the car, and drove out of the yard. I've never left my daughter alone like that. John drove as if in a daze out along Route 9E, a desolate stretch of road known as the Airline. He also said, and all of a sudden my car went dead completely. The motor went out, and I coasted to a stop. I tried to start my car. It wouldn't turn over. My battery wasn't dead because my lights were still on. John tried unsuccessfully to restart the car both in neutral and park. Then he turned off the radio and again tried to start the engine. There was no response at all. He had left the lights on because although this road was little traveled at that time of night, it was possible for a fast-moving logging truck to hit him head-on. But when he turned the key, the lights did not even dim. He said, all of a sudden I heard this noise. I used the word crackling because I can't explain the sound. It sounded similar to castanets, a steady click, 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 you know? The sound didn't scare me. I said, what the hell is that? John turned his head to the right, where the sound seemed to be coming from. Slightly ahead of his car, and off to the right, about 50 feet from the road, a huge, elongated, rectangular dark object was hovering 30 feet above the ground. Almost as soon as John saw it, a rectangular portion on the object's front end lit up and shone a soft green light through the car's front windshield. Simultaneously, John felt a strange tingling sensation like pins and needles course through his body, and he felt himself sink into a trance-like daze. He remained fully aware, but couldn't move a muscle. Strangely enough, his initial fear upon sighting the huge object had disappeared. He felt calm and afraid. I'm going to summarize what Fowler says here, but there's a moment of contact with something communicating through light. And it all ends with John being able to leave the spot. Specifically, his car instantly started. Why is this story important? Well, if you were approaching this from a traditional ufological or Fortean angle, like I try to, how would you categorize this, right? What would you focus on? A lot of people would focus on the stopped car. But remember how this whole thing started. It started with a compulsion, a drive to wander, to do things that he wouldn't have done normally, to leave his daughter in the middle of the night. That's a powerful thing. The Inverted Path tries to put these two opposites, these two polar opposites, in dialogue with one another. The wandering and the disorientation and the stopping of cars and vehicles and even people. I was so proud of Ecology of Souls and of Fourth Wall Phantoms. Those are, I think, truly profound books, right? The Inverted Path is great and I love it, but it's not that kind of a UFO book. It's very much a hearkening back to my earlier work. There's a time and a place to sort of examine the nature of reality and what it means to be on this planet and all that sort of thing. But the Inverted Path is not necessarily that. It's more of a look back into what I used to do, which was taking small things that appear across a variety of contact modalities. And again, trying to see how often these things turn up. And sure enough, you see wandering experiences in UFO lore, in cryptid lore, in ghost lore, and most famously in fairy folklore and the tradition of being pixie-led. So the first half of the book is that. But it occurred to me with stories like John's, and there's some others that sort of embody this too, that's only half the story, because the stopping is also along that same spectrum, right? Wandering and stopping. Because in both instances, you don't get where you're going. You're led astray, or you're forced to stop in your tracks. So I really do appreciate sort of the smaller scope of this. It was refreshing in a lot of ways to write. Doesn't say I won't write something that sort of looks at the nature of reality in the future, but I think this is one full of great stories. Some of you might be wondering why and how this came out so quickly after Fourth Wall Phantoms. I had an epiphany while working on Fourth Wall Phantoms, which is my workflow, right? I tend to go through my entire library, which at this point is rather extensive, every time I start a new book project. And that's a tiresome process. So it occurred to me that the sensible thing is to have multiple ideas for books in the background. And then as you're looking for something along this one strand of speculation, you can sort of pick up things for that future project and keep them sort of, the research runs concurrently, right? And this idea, doing a pixie-led book and putting it in the context of modern UFO experiences and the stoppages come from ghosts and cryptids and fairies too, by the way. This idea of doing a pixie-led book and a wandering book was something that I'd had for a while. So on the face of it, this book came together really quickly, but in another sense, it's been going on for a long, long while. And so I think that what I'm really excited about is showing that not only that these two ideas are related, but also sort of pushing back against some of the assumptions that we make in this space. I've come to the realization that at the end of the day, I am a contrarian. If someone makes a sweeping declaration about the phenomenon, that's my bat signal, right? It's like, I'm here to to push back against what you just said. And this is one of those, right? Especially in the case of stoppages. You talk to your average ufologist, and I literally had an interaction with someone at Contact in the Desert, who shall remain unnamed. When this topic came up, they said, oh, that's just electromagnetism. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that I take issue with, because it's a lot more complex than that. Electromagnetism is part of the answer behind what I think is going on here. You can't deny that in a lot of cases. But if you take a look at the high strangeness cases involving stoppages or involving wandering, it's not quite that simple. There's something else going on, something that can physically manipulate things, something that can interfere with mechanical systems and not just electronic systems or internal combustion systems. And a lot of the book is devoted to making that case. Things like wagons and ships, sailing ships, being stopped. In the sort of zone where physics don't apply that we are brought into when we have these experiences. I don't want to overemphasize that, because a lot of the cases seem like they could be chalked up to, electromagnetic field interference. It's a lot like, in some ways, the case that I was making in Ecology of Souls, which is that, yes, the dead do appear. Not a majority of cases, but it's often enough that the fact that it gets overlooked in the discussion is something that should be remarked upon. Another good example of this are self-starts. There's an entire subset of the stranded car scenario in regards to ufology, where the car just starts on its own, which especially in earlier years before cars got so computerized, it's something that just shouldn't happen. You could talk to a mechanic and they'd be like, there's no way for that to happen. And so examining the sort of apologetics and excuses that go into explaining that in a materialist model is also part of what the book seeks to get at. And again, the answer is never one, right? One single thing. It's always both and. As I've been fond of saying lately, the times in my life when I get in trouble are when I engage in either or thinking rather than both and thinking. So the inverted path is really an invitation to look at that sort of both and thinking. And to sort of close on this brief note about what to expect from the book, I would like to put out a call to the people who are sympathetic to my view of the phenomenon, which if you're watching this, you probably are. If you're reading my stuff, you definitely are. This is an interesting inflection point in the UFO discourse. And if you followed me for long enough, you know that I've been historically very critical of disclosure. I've softened a great deal. And I think that we do have some form of disclosure, right? Disclosure was never about saying, oh, the aliens come from Zeta Reticuli, here's one, take a look at him, here's Ambassador Kleborp, you know? That was never what I think disclosure was about. And that's a mistake on my part. Somebody's not having engine interference. Loud motorcycle. Okay. Disclosure was never about those sort of answers. I think it was, in hindsight, really about getting people to open up to the question or open up to the reality of what we're embedded in. I was wrong about that, and I will, completely transparently say that I was wrong about that. And if that's the case, if it's just about getting people to question what's going on, then we are in the middle of some sort of disclosure. And not only that, but I've started thinking of this as like a two-pronged question, right? And the first question, which is that binary, is something strange. We're past that. I really think that we are. Most people you'll talk to on the street, if they care, there's a subset of people who don't care, which I don't really understand, but if people care about the UFO question, most people out on the street will say that, yeah, something is strange and something is going on and we're not getting the full story. So question one has been answered, but now we're transitioning into question two. And it's not if. Question two is a nested series of questions. Who, how, what, why? And I really want to encourage people who are plugged into the transformative aspects of contact experiences, and quite frankly, the more meaningful aspects of contact experiences that aren't threats in the sky or propulsion systems or anti-gravity. The people who are really plugged into what it means to be us and what it means to be in this reality, I want to encourage you to continue to engage with people on that front. Once you know that someone's past question one, start laying the groundwork for question two, because we're not only going to need that in terms of just your average person getting through the true ontological shock, which never was aliens. It's about what the nature of reality is, right? We're going to need people laying that groundwork, but also I think we can sort of help guide people to the profundity of this experience and how really it can serve as an escape valve for a lot of the problems that we find ourselves embedded in. A lot of the infighting and polarization that we see takes a back seat once you realize that everything is connected and that you are me and I am you, and that when I hurt you, I'm hurting me. So question one's out of the way, and I would invite everyone to start looking at question two. Question two isn't answered in the inverted path, but the inverted path does show that what we're dealing with is not strictly a function of physics and of nuts and bolts and scientific advancements. It's part of the story. It's part of the story. But it's not the whole story. And I would encourage you to sort of embrace that as things get weird, because they're going to get weird. The Inverted Path is available now. You can pick it up from Amazon, I know. But you can also pick it up directly from me by writing me at my website. There's a contact form. I will have copies, author copies. They're not here yet, but I will have author copies signed directly from me that I ship out via media mail. It's a fast and easy process, I promise. So let's start a dialogue, and let's look forward to question number 2. Thanks, everyone.